Well, full disclosure, I'm a board member at the Peoria Historical Society, so just want you to know that. And I asked Susie, and she brought Jim, and they didn't give me anything to introduce them with other than the fact that Susie is our president right now, and Jim is a board member as well. And they're going to come up and give us what's new at the Peoria Historical Society, including what this is all about right here. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, take a close look because it's very rare. So Susie, you want to come up? Susie Papenhause. I was going to Susie Papenhause. I'm in the wrong place.
Thank you, and we're so happy to have you on our board, John. I'm Susie Papenhause, and I'm two-year term board president at Peoria Historical Society. We are so thrilled to be here today. Thanks for inviting us. How many even know about the Peoria Historical Society or what we do? Oh, that's a great show of hands. Good. I have to confess something, that when I was growing up, I knew we had a historical society, but I had no clue what they did. And I soon learned that there is so much more to it. They're not just collecting items and giving us pictures to share, etc. So I hope I run this correctly.
Yep, you will.
There we go. Okay. Our vision, excuse me, is to share and celebrate and preserve our rich Peoria history. It's phenomenal as to what the stories that you can learn throughout, with any of our events. I learn something new every single time I'm around one of our historians. We support historic scholarship and collaborate with other organizations such as museums and corporations. And we want to be the community resource for all of this information, for the historical information. I'm going to real quick talk about this flag that we just received from the Junior League of Peoria that had it in somewhere in a drawer, not a drawer, but they had it in a closet somewhere. It's a 39-star flag. Back when the Dakotas were set to become one state, that would have been our 39th state, there were some problems within the two areas. One was more heavily populated, they didn't agree on things, so they became two states. So this flag was never issued. It was made, but it was never issued. They jumped immediately to a 40-star flag. This was given to us just within the last week or two, and it's rare, obviously, because
What year is that?
1889. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, and it came framed to us. We will not take it apart because we're afraid it would disintegrate. We have in our possession, in our.
She can't.
I know.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we were incorporated in 1934, and now we have over 75,000 items in our collection. We have two historic house museums. Greg spoke of one, our Peoria-North house on Moss Avenue. It's beautiful. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. We also have our John Flanagan house on Glen Oak. We have community partnerships, educational outreach. We do social and fundraising events. We do have a working board of trustees. And then we have our office staff of an executive director, curator, and our office manager. The John Flanagan House is the oldest standing home in Peoria. It was built in 1837 by Judge Flanagan. I don't know, has anybody been to Flanagan House? Greg, I know you have been. And it's really interesting with all of the artifacts that we have within the home. It's on the National Register of Historic Places, and the DAR meets there, that is their headquarters. And we have owned it since 1966. Here's some pictures of it. It was the largest house built in Peoria at its time, overlooking the river valley. And all of the materials used, except for the bricks, they were hauled from Chicago, and the bricks were made on site. We do still have some of the original windows, The walls are very thick. It was built to last, I think. The address of the home now is Glen Oak Avenue, right near the hospitals. That used to be Bluff Street. And I'm sure most of you are aware, but orientation of houses that overlook the bluff, those were considered the front of the houses. And then those on the street were considered the back of the houses. Well, when Bluff Street changed to Glen Oak, it was because of the road orientation of the house, and the back became the front became the back. So I hope I said that correctly. It's been in our historical museum under our care since 1962. Unfortunately, none of the original furnishings remain, but all of the artifacts and furniture, they come from a wide variety of donors and from various time periods occasionally, so that you can see what we have. And for gentlemen, the basement is really interesting for the tools that were used, and it's just massive, the amount of things that we have. We are open by appointment. They're open for functions such as Christmas parties, showers, whatever you care to do, or alternating Sundays. Here's a couple of items from the Flanagan House, such as the sideboard and then the casket Grand Steinway, which is beautiful. And then, excuse me, a mantle clock from the 1800s, and then a collar box, which I'm assuming is the collar. I'm not familiar with that one myself. The Pettingill Morin House on Moss Avenue, it was built in 1868 for $15,000, which don't we wish we could buy a house that grand at that price now. Moses Pettingill who was a businessman. He was involved in the Underground Railroad. He was an abolitionist. A very interesting story on him. It too is National Register of Historic Places. Jean Morin was the last owner, and then she bestowed it to the Peoria Historical Society in 1966. We are open there on Thursdays and alternating Sundays. And it is a wonderful place for weddings, showers, private dinners, tea, luncheon, whatever. And it's too is available for renting out, plus you get the tour of the home. And this is, we've done a little bit of renovation on the PM house. We did some painting, and it's, as any homeowner knows, every house needs work constantly, and a home this age, and the same with Flanagan. It's always constant reminder that we need help in maintaining them. This is these are a few of the pictures of the Pettingill Morin House. It's a gorgeous facility as well. I am going to ask Jim to come up and talk about our community partners and other interesting information that we have, like events that we have going on coming up.
Thanks, Susie, and thanks to John, Rotary North, and all of you for giving us a few minutes on your program. You know, I'm glad you started with the houses, because I think that's what we're most known for, and I'm also very glad to see that some of you have actually been to these houses, and they're really cool. Susie mentioned the basement. I was blown away when I went to the basement of Flanagan House, because it has got some really special things, talking about crafts and industries that are long gone, such as foot-powered drills and lathes and things like that. Really worth a visit. The basement of PM House, which we just recently painted and fixed the porch on, has got a really cool little antique shop. You know, we get a lot of donations. Everything historic and significant we will put into our collection, but some things we just put into that antique shop, and you get some great prices there. You know, these houses are great, but there's a lot more to it than our houses. We are the only organization solely devoted to telling the stories of our city's fascinating history. We preserve, we share, and we celebrate. You know, you all know that Peoria is the oldest European settlement in Illinois, settled in the late 17th century. The people, and then there were people here before that, obviously. The Peoria tribe was here for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years because of the richness of this area. You know, when the steamboats started to come, Peoria grew very, very quickly. Peoria County was started in 1825, 200 years ago this year, and they're starting to celebrate that. In the mid-19th century, Peoria became the whiskey capital of the world. We had 73 distilleries, 24 breweries. And prior to 1913, before we had a federal income tax, the federal government got 30 to 40% of its annual revenue through liquor tax. In many years, Peoria was the biggest single area paying that liquor tax. So people forget that. Peoria was a pretty big deal. And we would say Peoria still is a pretty big deal. And that's why we're here, to preserve and share and celebrate these stories. You know, we're not a museum. We do have these 75,000 items in our collection, and we share them with partners. Wheels of Time Museum, we often have exhibits there where they have a little space set aside for our stuff. The Peoria Public Library, we recently had a really interesting display at the Peoria Public Library about all the theaters that populated Peoria. There were dozens of them, and they were very, very grand. We have a lot of art in our collection, and at the end I'm going to show you a little sampling of some of the things in our collection. Obviously, a lot of flags. Flags tell great stories. They're both artistic, but important symbols for us to gather around. Just going to buzz through this real quick because we have 96 slides. I was telling John that we'll be here to dinner if we linger on every one. We're going to go very, very quickly. But just to give you a taste, WTVP has been a great partner for us through the years. We have our trivia night there. A lot of paintings, a lot of people, portraits back before photography was a thing. If people wanted their image preserved, you had to paint a picture of them. So we have a lot of these portraits. Springdale Cemetery is a wonderful place. We do a lot with Springdale. We have tours through there, bus tours, walking tours, a lot of events at Springdale. And if you haven't been to Springdale recently, you really need to check that out because it's got a lot of Peoria history in it. I mentioned Trivia Night, a fun event, 90% Peoria trivia. It's a fun event. We have this Rennick Art Show that's been going on for over 50 years. We partner with the Riverfront Museum. We have it in one of their galleries. We have it professionally judged. The art talent here in this area is tremendous, and most of the art has some kind of a local theme to it. We run annual meetings at the Penton Morin House. Anybody's invited to them. The bus tours are probably one of our most popular events. The bus tours take into aspects all areas of the city. One of our most popular tours is in the October month where we do Haunted Peoria tours, and we probably do that 7 or 8 times, and they all sell out. Everybody loves it. We can do private tours, walking tours. It's fun to go to the backyard of the Flanagan House. As Susie said, it sits up on the bluff. For a couple of bucks, you can bring a blanket and a picnic lunch, sit in the backyard, and watch the fireworks in a really cool setting. We have one big fundraiser a year. It's named after Henri de Tonte. He was an Italian-born member of the French Army and Navy. That was one of the early explorers, along with LaSalle and some of the others, Father Marquette, that came up and explored this area. He helped establish Fort Creve Coeur about in the 1670s, and then came back in the 1690s and lived here in Peoria for a while and helped get that started. One of our biggest events every year that most people know us for is the Holiday Home Tour. Susie's been driving that personally for the last several years. We'll have 1,000 people go through a selection of tours. This last year, we focused on some condos down in the warehouse district, and people were just blown away at how interesting those were. And then we've recently started a series of public lectures. I've only been on the board for a couple years, and I've learned so much about Peoria history in those 2 years. But one of the complaints I got as chairman of the Membership and Programs Committee is, you know, all you do is fundraise. You don't give back. You don't tell stories enough. And so we started these series of lectures. A lot of our stuff is co-located with Bradley University's archive and the library they have up on the second floor. And we had an open house up there, opened up that archive, let people actually walk into the archives, and it was very, very popular. Springdale Cemetery. Many of you drive by on War Memorial Drive, the back of this mausoleum all the time and don't even realize what it is. But it is a cool place. We had a program inside the mausoleum, and again, very, very well attended. Jan Powers opened up her house in West Peoria on Moss Avenue to us, and she's an artist. She invited some artist friends, and we had a nice morning there. Just recently, a couple of weeks ago, we had a visit to the Peoria's Lincoln branch, which is the only Carnegie library in this area. And it's spectacular. It's the front of that building. It's got a big addition in the back where most of the books are now and the offices are now, but the front is preserved just like it was built back in the 1910. And we just finished the Peoria-Marquette programs and lectures. Again, a lot of us have had special moments at the Peoria-Marquette. They've got some new managers down there, and they wanted to partner with us to help tell the story. And we had 2 sessions with a big, long waiting list for this, so we'll probably do that one again. And coming up, Liz Kleiss, our executive director, wanted me to mention that we've got on February 13th at 10 a.m. a tour of the children's home on Knoxville there. Again, we drive by it all the time. Most of us have never been inside it. It's a 158-year-old history of Peoria's original orphanage and how it's grown. That current building on Knoxville is just for administration now. They don't have any kids or families in there now, but they have locations all over central Illinois. They've grown to be quite a big organization. Tremendous building, tremendous history. We've got a Jane Austen book club that's going to meet at the Papenhause. We've got a story about Moses Pettengill on Sunday, February 16th. Football will be over. We'll have nothing to do. Let's go back in our history. And, you know, Moses Pettengill was a big abolitionist, and he was a big member of the Underground Railroad. And then in March, we've got Happy Anniversary Caterpillar. It's Caterpillar's 100th anniversary this year, too. So Mark Johnson, another former Caterpillar worker, along with Steve Tarter, used to work for the Journal-Star, have written a book, and they're going to launch their book, Tracks Across America, Caterpillar Tractors and Growth of a Nation, down at the Creve Coeur Club. So a lot going on. If we have time, John, do we have time?
Oh, yeah.
All right. I'm going to run through, Susie mentioned we've got 75,000 items in our collection. And I don't know what most of these things are. But I think a lot of them are really cool. You know, this is probably from the whiskey distilling days, you know, but it just gives you an idea. Most of the 75,000 items we have are documents. They're letters, they're diaries, they're books, but we have a lot more than that. You know, we have a lot of art. This is a really cool picture. And then some of the houses display some of the interesting furniture that has been donated to us. Camellia Kenyon, who is the mother of a famous architect in the area, Les Kenyon, and a very accomplished person herself, was a prolific artist, and her impressionist styles is something I really enjoy, and she has some wonderful paintings. Another aspect of being part of the Historic Society is you kind of learn the backstory of some of the names you see around Peoria all the time. We all know Detweiler Park and Detweiler Marina. Well, there was a Captain Henry Detweiler who was a riverboat pilot. He also served in the Civil War. He was also one of Peoria's early treasurers. He was big in the community. So we've got some mementos about him. The Women's Club is a great asset to our community. They've been revitalized and restoring this building. We've had some mementos from them for quite a long time. Code. Who knows the significance of the steamboat Columbia?
Is that the one that
It
sunk?
sank, didn't it? In what, about 1909? 87 people or so died. So it was a big disaster, I think right around Creve Coeur where the lock and dams are. Another quilt. Kind of a spooky picture of Mr. Zeller. More really cool furniture, more quilts. Goldstein jewelry. Anybody know who Mr. Goldstein was? He was the father of Betty Friedan. Betty Friedan, you know, in 1963 wrote the book, The Feminist Mystique. She kind of launched the second wave of feminism. You know, feminism was, you know, they got the vote earlier in the century, and then it went quiet for a little bit, and Betty kind of revitalized it. The Peoria Opera House. This building was on Hamilton. It was a huge building, 3 stories, big spires, could seat 1,750 people. Had big name acts come through all the time. It was built in the early 1880s, and it caught on fire in 1909 in the winter, and they couldn't put the fire out, so it was razed. Dish towels, a trunk, more art. Another local artist, self-trained artist, did some wonderful art and has a big following here in the area. Hiram Walker, obviously, you know, all of we know where Hiram Walker is. It became ADM, and now it's BioUrgent. But for a while, it was the largest distillery in the world. Over 1,000 people worked there and put out a very intoxicating aroma all throughout the city. We had some big grocery stores and things down the warehouse district. It's great to see some of those buildings being restored. This is an interesting one. The little lamp on your left is a Tiffany lamp, a little desk lamp, but the one on the right is one of the big Tiffany table lamps with the classic dragonfly design to it, worth easily $100,000. Several years ago, it was stolen.
Oh.
And now you can see it's got the little pad underneath it. That's an alarm pad in case if you lift it up, a loud alarm will go off. Trust me, I've done it. But we recovered it. And of all places, we recovered it in a pawn shop in Peoria, Arizona. So for some reason, the thief took it and went to Peoria, Arizona and tried to pawn it. I don't know the logic of that at all, but that's where we found it. And we got it back. Now we've got it alarmed. A chair from Lincoln's house that Lincoln actually used. And speaking of Lincoln, Lincoln did sleep at the Flanagan house when he was here for the Lincoln-Douglas debates. You know, we do have a house that Lincoln slept at, and we have a chair that he sat in. Some clothes we have. Statue of Mr. Ingersoll, who was the great agnostic, famous orator back in his time. John Rydell, when I was a kid, you'd see his cartoons in the Journal Star. We've got some of his collection. A little bit of stained glass. Mr. Fulton's hat. This is a cool piece. It's in the PM house. It is a lamp that is also a phonograph. So if you look on the bottom, it's one of those horns, which is a speaker. So instead of the speaker on the old Victrolas kind of going out like this, it faces down. And it serves as both a lamp and a record player. Lacey Beer, probably one of the biggest of the many breweries in Peoria that many people have heard of here. Abe Lincoln campaign banner. Peoria used to have a lot of hotels downtown. This is a piece of one of those. Another hat. People used to wear a lot of hats. Palace Theater, one of the many theaters we had, just a grand place. Peoria Pottery, one of the biggest potteries in the world was in Peoria, and they made fairly brown utilitarian stuff, but it's also very collectible still.
Hold all that liquor.
The Peoria Red Wings, softball team, more pictures, belt buckle. Only 75 more slides to go. Now this one I teased Susie about because she's a Spalding Academy alum. And if you notice, this is a Letterman's jacket with the date 1973 on it. And, you know, some of us graduated high school before 1973, so I guess if this is history, we're ancient history, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of good memories there. Any doctors in the room? Yeah. That's kind of a scary type thing. If you had a, you know, bleeding in your brain, they would actually dig that in there and take a plug out. Yep. Yeah. So that was it. I just wanted to give you kind of an idea of some of our collection. It's very diverse, if you can still use that word. You know, Peoria has an amazing history, and we just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of it. It's amazing how important it is to many of the citizens here. You know, if you're interested, we did bring along some membership cards. Individual memberships are only $35 a piece. We are starting a corporate partnership program for companies and organizations, and we're just going to be launching that in the next month or two. We have had a lot of interest in, you know, people wanting to kind of partner with us on a basis like that, so look for that. And we're always looking for volunteers, and we're always looking for board members, just like every other nonprofit. And so if you're interested, please contact Susie, John, myself, and we'd be happy to tell you more about it. So thank you very much for your time.
Is the lamp the most valuable thing that you have? What is the most valuable thing you have?
Yeah, you know, that's a question that we've talked about quite a bit. It probably is, but we have not had a complete appraisal of our collection in a long, long time. And it's hard to get somebody who can appraise the breadth of things that you're talking about, and they want to charge you quite a bit for each item. And when you have 70,000 items, it's expensive. So yeah, we did have Sotheby's give us an estimate on the lamp. The big lamp was $125,000, and the small lamp was $70,000.
Speaking of the lamp real quick, I'm one of those geeks that watches Antique Roadshow, and they had a medium-sized Tiffany lamp that just went for $250,000, and it was taped several years ago. So just to give you an idea,
Yeah.
it's probably up there.
Yeah. That's why that guy stole it.
Yeah.
He sold it
Greg
to
was
the
on the
wrong
ball
people.
earlier and mentioned that he had had a function at the Pettengill Moran House, and it sparked something in my brain. My wife and I got married there in the backyard in 7707. We were one of those couples.
Oh,
It was a
nice.
Saturday morning, and Jim Barrick catered it, the event. We had a huge tent out back, so we had the tours and everything with all the family and friends, and then we had the wedding out back. We had a nice brunch, and by noon, my wife and I were on our way to Chicago to the airport. So it was a great event. So another real quick thing, I know we're running low on time, but I want to give a little piece of trivia that you two may not even be aware of, is Springdale Cemetery. It's my understanding that there is a war veteran from every war buried out in that cemetery. Is that correct?
That sounds correct, sir. I'll take your word for it.
Okay, well, that's not even the piece of trivia. There's also one arm buried out there by itself. in the cemetery. And the story behind that is I have a colleague going back 20 years or so ago. She was a little bit older than me, but her husband was on a field trip back in the 50s at Glen Oak, back before they had all the security there. And he was maybe 10 years old or whatever he was. And he had a tiger pull his arm off, basically.
Oh my gosh.
So his family had the arm buried out of Springdale with the family plot, so when he passed away, he could be buried with them.
Reunited with
So, and it's been many years now, so he may have passed as well because he was older, but I'd seen him at the Bradley games, without the arm and stuff, of course, but, anyway, just a little piece of trivia.
Thank you.
How do you even ask a question after that?
What's your biggest fundraiser to maintain these houses and collection?
Yeah, it would be that detente event where we honor a local person or couple or organization that has made a real difference in Peoria. We've had people like, Ray LaHood and Dave Kaler, but there's, this last year, we honored some of our volunteers and some local historians who really have put hundreds of hours into helping us be able to tell some of these stories. We have lots and lots of slideshows that go into the details of, Peoria as a distilling capital or great women of Peoria. That's where we tell our stories mostly. We'll go to the Women's Club, we'll go to organizations like this with requests for talking about some subject, and we generally do have a story to tell there.
I just have a quick question. At what date does something become historic?
1973, evidently.
Is that the cutoff, or is it 85?
No, that is a great question, and it's something that we've talked about a lot because people have their niches. Various board members and volunteers. They love certain parts of history. Civil War obviously is a big one. The distilling is a big one. But our new executive director, to her credit, she said, there's a story to be told here within our lifetimes, and one of our lectures coming up in a few months is going to be about Southtown. And it was in the 70s, I believe, that City of Peoria decided to raise all that neighborhood south of downtown, and then we built the Peoria University of Illinois Medical Center, and we built some housing there. But it was a neighborhood. It was a neighborhood of houses. It was a neighborhood of grocery stores, drugstores, doctor's offices, dentist offices, lawyers. And we were very fortunate to come across a collection of photos and drawings of almost all these buildings. We have maps of the old streets, because even the streets changed when we did that down there. And we're going to launch that and just try to get people, when people see pictures of an old house in their neighborhood, memories start coming back, and then we're going to try to capture some of their stories about that little community that was there. So in my mind, to answer your question, it doesn't have to be 200 or 300 years old to be historic, because people forget, we're all tied up in our day-to-day lives, but there's a reason why things are what they are, and if you go back in history, you can kind of see that. And you can argue whether Southtown was a success or not, but we're not trying to be political or anything. We're just trying to present what it used to look like, and people can have their own memories from that.